adding another car. And so I think it was probably them in anticipation of adding another car. You can't just overnight wriggle your nose and say we're going to add another car. It takes a lot of people, parts, and everything else. So maybe they got that crew training in case they do decide to add another car.
Well, or have those guys training in case someone on the primary 39 or the 14 crew happens to get hurt or leaves the race team. These two boys, they have been bumper to bumper. David Rudeman, Martin Truex Jr., they have been like this almost this entire practice session.
And Larry, look how many laps, 25, 26 laps, and just about more than anybody but Vickers with 33.
And I think what I'm seeing right there is the reason that Robin Pemberton, John Darby, they made the decision to go a little smaller with the carburetor restrictor plate hose from the tire test, because those two cars a little earlier hooked up bumper to bumper. Both of them ran over 195 miles an hour, and that's just two cars.
Yeah, one thing I was worried about, Larry, was how this new nose was going to line up with the rear bumper. You know, the old car, the old nose, it was flat, and the rear bumper and the nose actually lined up, and I thought that was helping these guys be able to stay on each other and push each other. This nose a little more rounded. I was afraid that we're going to get back into a situation like we were a few years ago, where the car behind would be trying to lift the car in front of it up by going up underneath of it. So far, I think it's okay. It looks like that nose and the rear bumper are lining up pretty good. I don't see that nose trying to go under the back of the car and trying to lift the car in front of it up, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, because quite honestly, the height of the front bumper and the height of the rear bumper is still pretty close to the same distance off the ground. The most notable difference about these noses is that cavity below that main front bumper, where on these cars I think you'll see the word Camry. That cavity underneath there has been filled in. You no longer have those splitter braces that would absolutely deal teams fits in a lot of ways. You still have a splitter, but a lot like the new Nationwide Series car, there's just a lot less of it exposed.
Much cleaner. And as Larry was talking about the braces, I mean, even in the pits. But then think about some of the short tracks and tracks that we'd go to where there's a lot of body contact. And that old splitter was sticking out past the front fenders, and guy'd get up against you and cut your left rear tire down. He didn't mean to. He just kind of rubbed into you, and that old splitter would get in there and cut your tire down. That's going to be a lot better for that perspective as well.
Let's go back down to John Roberts and Jeff Hammond.
Steve, thanks a lot. And Jeff, when you saw those cars get wrecked up, the original COT car, it looked like it was a very big pain to these crew members to get down there and start working on those braces on the splitters, that was a real difficult thing to fix.
It really was, JR. I mean, it was just really a nightmare in a certain respect, that the way the design was. So I think a lot of the teams are really excited about the changes that NASCAR made. But to me, what helps us, I think, even more, it makes these cars look a lot more representative of what you see on the street itself. I mean, you saw the changes that they made with the Nationwide Series cars. I think that's what's in the future for the Cup Series, in years to come. And this is a step in the right direction of getting rid of the splitter and getting the cars where they look more like what you see on the regular street version. As we watch these teammates continue to run around the racetrack, JR, we talk about this front end and how important it is to get the nose on the ground. There's all types of approaches right now. Let's take a quick look here. Here's one of the Chevys right here coming up off of turn 2. You see how the nose is just kind of like pinned to the ground right there on that 14 car of Tony Stewart's. But take a look at what the difference may be as far as the Toyota is concerned. All these attitudes of these cars are what these teams are working on now. This is the Red Bull car of Brian Vickers. And let's see what a Dodge looks like in comparison to everybody else. Everybody is looking to possibly get it down right on the racetrack and seal it off. And then again, we've seen Jeff Gordon's car up off the racetrack just a little bit. Here's Marcus Ambrose's car, and this is a Ford right here coming up off of turn 2 and what it looks like. And you see a little bit more of an air gap on that 9 car, and it makes you wonder, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Because right now he's currently 21st fastest in this practice session.
Now, when you talk, Jeff, about these NASCAR wanting to differentiate the brands, make that brand identity back again, what is similar about the noses?
They're all the same. I mean, everything, is the way NASCAR's put it together, like this entire car. You can take any template, whether it's a Ford template or a Dodge template, and you can interchange them. Even though they have their own identities on it, it's just really some of the symmetrical looks. I mean, little small, subtle things as far as the headlight doors, but the way the openings are, the depth as far as the cavity is concerned, everything else, all the shapes, they're identical. That's the reason why you can go and take a Dodge and go to the body shop in a day's time. You can come back out with a Toyota, a Ford, or a Chevrolet. It's not a big difference It's just the little things. Like I say, the front grille, the way it looks different from a Toyota to Chevrolet. It's just the little things.
And I think at least maybe 9 out of 10, or at least the vast majority of the fans that you asked and the competitors you asked too about the Nationwide Series cars, how different they are, how much brand identity is in them, that's really a good thing that happened to that series and a sign of the times of the future for us.
It is, and again, I think the biggest reason, it's a huge undertaking, and NASCAR had the privilege of making a decision with the Nationwide Series that, hey, when we build this car, we build a new one, we can do these things because, again, it's brand new. They can take what was eventually the COT. That was the beginning of what the learning curve is. And now they're working back toward what we see in the Nationwide Series. But they just can't do it. I say they don't want to do it abruptly because, again, it's a huge cost undertaking. And we know how all these teams are strapped right now trying to find financing and make it work as far as that's concerned. So the nose change, the bottom half of the nose is what's been changed. Remove the valence, go back with the we'll go back with the valence to get away from the splitter. So it gives more of a, what I call a passenger car look.
And even though there are differences between the car of tomorrow, you can take a short track car and run it on a big track. The real truth of the matter is there are still specialty cars in these shops. There still is a speedway car, a Daytona car, a Talladega car, and also a road course car.
Absolutely. The little subtle changes, we talked about it earlier today. When you're looking for a needle in a haystack, you don't want to be trying to run a Martinsville car here at Daytona. And at the same time, you don't want to take a Daytona car and go to Martinsville. It's the little things that help you as far as going faster, keeping the car wound up here at Daytona that you don't need at a place like Martinsville. So, yes, even though they can't be interchanged, but if a team got strapped, a lot like when I started in my career working with Junior Johnson, we had two cars in the shop. We had a Martinsville or short track type car, and we had a super speedway car. If we crashed bad enough, we could take and modify that car and go race it if we had to. That was just the way it was. They can do the same thing here. If a team came in and only had 4 cars, they could run the entire season and probably make it work.
Best way to make a small fortune racing is start with a big fortune.
Exactly right.
Let's take a look at the fastest drivers out on the racetrack right now. David Rudiman, Martin Truex Jr. in that 2-car breakaway, Jeff, have been the fastest so far. And then teammates from Red Bull, Casey Kane and Brian Vickers. Again, those guys are fastest by far in the Toyotas. The rest of the guys are out there experimenting with the single-car runs.
Teams are still looking. I mean, they're still going through their testing process. I mean, all these crew chiefs have sat down with the engineers.